Preparing the bamboo is best done roughed out on a bandsaw and then finished with an edge tool like a plane, then finally tidied up on the belt sander. Is I do a first cut like that, trimming off the top corner, and then a second cut like that, trimming off the bottom corner, cut very close to the shiny outer face of the bamboo, which leaves you almost a razor edge there. But of course this will be reduced in width later on, so what you thought was a razor edge will actually be a bit thicker. So here's a length that I've done that on, and you can see I've sawn off that side and that side, leaving quite a thin edge. Now I'll clamp that down and take the plane to it and plane off this centre section till it's all smooth and even. But what I'll do first is I'll just file a flat onto the nodes here, so that when I clamp it up it sits fairly flat on the length of 2x2. But even that, you'd think bamboo would be straight, but in fact you find it's got some twist in it. That's showing up very well. It's got twist in it, and where the nodes are you get sort of, you can see it dips down there and comes back up, so it's quite hard to get it good and flat. But like I say, you don't have to worry too much. If you think you've gone too thin there, it doesn't matter, because by the time it's been cut narrower, that sharp edge becomes fatter again anyway, and you'll be alright. There, that just shows where I filed the node down flat to help it sit better on a bit of 2x2. And if you look closely at the node, you've got this ridge, and you've got like a flat area there, then it steps down, and similar this side. What I do is I actually file it down till you just touch that raised step there, or level with that. I don't go right down to nothing. I mean, some people do, but if you go down to that sort of level, then it looks quite attractive when it's cleaned up. And it's ugly as hell at the minute. You've got this matte sort of bloom on it and all this muck, but once that's all scraped, that will look lovely and clean. For reducing the bamboo, I just use my jack plane again. If you try and do it all on a sander, you'll just wear out sanding belts, you'll make a hell of a lot of dust, and it will take forever. That's good for the final flattening. Bamboo's nasty stuff. It's hard, the splinters are really sharp and can be nasty on your hands, so take care. But it planes really well if you've got a good sharp blade. This should be relatively sharp, having sharpened it recently. You can hear the noise when it's cutting nicely, it bites and really rips it off. Oh, that's interesting, there's a funny sort of split there. Never seen that before. You plane it down until this sort of concave inner surface has disappeared, and you've got down to nice smooth bamboo. There's that funny split I'm talking about. Get my thumbnail in there. I'll have to have a look the other side. Don't know what that is. Shouldn't be a problem as it's longitudinal anyway. But that will do just to show how I do it. I'll probably sharpen the plane and carry on. I've decided to sharpen the plane blade. It looks fairly sharp, but there's plenty of good videos on YouTube about sharpening tools. I use that's an oil stone. It's a double-sided, coarse on the bottom. This is the fine side, so I just give it a light clean with that, going that way. and then I'll hone it on this, which is a block of MDF with some leather glued on it, and then the leather has got polishing compound rubbed into it, and that just effectively polishes the cutting edge, and you'll take off any fine burr that you've done if you sharpened it so much that it's raised a little burr on the edge. Just cleaning it up little and often is often the best way to sharpen. I don't profess to be the world's best at sharpening things, but this is just how I do it. So I'm just honing the edge. It'd be ground, say on a belt sander, to an angle like that, and then honed at a slightly steeper angle, just so you get a decent edge on the last, just along the tip there. Then if you can feel any burrs, you can just take it off by going like that. I can't feel any burrs at the minute. That's looking a lot better already. So just having done that, give it a little wipe like that. Clean it off on some paper towel. That's looking nicer. Don't know if you can see that catching the light. That looks like a decent edge on that. Oh, and just for anyone who doesn't know, the plain blade goes that way with this piece on top sitting just a little bit behind it. That helps break up the shavings as they come off. That gets tightened in with this screw, which this part fits in to act as a screwdriver, so you don't need any tools to adjust your plane. That then sits in like that. You have to waggle it around to get it to locate. So you've actually got the bevel of the blade, that is the slope, is hanging out the bottom. It's not that way up, it's that way up. You joggle it until it sits square. That goes on top. Lever snaps down. If that's too tight or too loose, you can adjust it with this screw. And you can probably see it sticking out way too much at the moment. This lever at the top pushes it from side to angle the blade this way to make sure each corner is sticking out the same. This thumb wheel pushes the blade, well, the whole blade assembly, down or up to give you the depth of cut. So that's slightly too much at the minute. I'll wind that with me thumb. A bit more. I'm just feeling it. I'm not going to slice the skin off my thumb. Now, I don't know if you could hear that. That sounds a bit better now. Now that's planed most of the length of it. You can see here what it looks like before planing and after planing. I've sanded down the bamboo backing, got it all nice and smooth, just clamped it up lightly with the yew back on there, so I can draw around that with a pencil, then saw it out. I've got a bit hanging out each end. I'll trim that off a bit, but I've arranged it so the nodes in the bamboo are sort of equally spaced around the centre of the bow. So next job, mark round that with a pencil, saw it out on the bandsaw, then probably sand it again because it'll look thicker than it did originally. Right, I've sawn out the bamboo to the same shape as the yew backing. But what you can see now is, as I said, it looks a lot thicker at the tips now than it did before. You can also see how the thickness changes near the nodes. There are some areas that are a bit thick that I'll sand down a little bit more. But you see, on this particular bit of bamboo, it seems to go very thin either side of the node. So I may just have to live with it being a bit thick here. If I thin it here, then you'll find the back, instead of being flat, it sort of undulates and will be harder to clamp down. Sometimes you just got to let the material do what it wants, you know, you can't bully it. On this one I noticed the nodes seem to go across the bow at a bit of an angle too. But like I said, it's all part of the charm, all part of the interest. What I can do is dry assemble it with the back on one way, then reverse it and see if the two bits still match up. That'll help to show me if there's any sort of mismatch. See, that's the way it was marked out. If I turn my bit of belly round the other way and put it on again, we'll see if it still fits. Well, no, it doesn't. We're, you know, like 1/4 inch out there. So the implication is that the bow's not quite straight. There's a bit sideways bend on it. Oh dear, what a mess up. Well, no, that's why I always leave it 20mm wide at the tips. It gives me an adjustment. It's, in the end, it's going to be about 12.5, you know, millimeters, half an inch. So I've got plenty of leeway to shift the tips across one way or the other. Always good to double check everything, and it's always a mistake to try and saw anything out too accurately first time. Just doing a bit of a dry run of the glue up here. What I do is I've got a tub full of wooden blocks. Some of them have been touched on the belt sander to give a curved face, so they can go on the bamboo like that. You can see why I've glued up my former with this funny arrangement that looks a bit like a pagoda or something. It's so I can get a G-clamp in there onto the wooden block and clamp it down. Otherwise I'd need much deeper G-clamps. Of course a 6 or 10 inch G-clamp is a lot more expensive than a 4-inch one, and you can never have enough G-clamps. That's just nipped the clamp up lightly. That's just giving me an idea. It clamps quite nicely. And yeah, if I've got a good old sweep up in the shed, then I can glue that. What I do is I put a nice strip of 2-inch wide masking tape on the former, just to stop the bow getting actually stuck down to it. A quick double check before glue up. I'll put marks to show which way round they go. I've cleaned up the edges of the bamboo. I've run the corners along the belt sander just to take the splinters off, because where it went through the saw there are really nasty splinters all along that edge. Masking tape on the former there, so it's mix up the glue now, and then we're ready to go. The glue is Cascamite, which comes in a powder form, and it's mixed 2 parts of powder to 1 of water by weight. The nice thing is it's got a 2-hour life before it starts going tacky, so you can get it on there, you can mix it up, get it on there. If you've made a mistake or you're worried that it's a bit dry in somewhere, you can open it up, apply more glue, clamp it up again. It's got a good shelf life as well. It's cheap as chips compared with a lot of epoxies, and I've never had any problem with it. So yeah, try it if you like. You can buy it in relatively small quantities on the internet, or I tend to buy a big tub because I get through a reasonable amount of it, and I mix it up in a good quantity. I'd rather have too much than suddenly find I've got to mix up more halfway through the job. This is a Cascamite. It's a very fine white powder. you do it half the water first. Funny thing about this is the instructions say apply it only to one surface, but I apply it to both, because on something under a lot of stress like a bow, the one thing you don't want is a dry joint. Quality, I'll go for 1,000 grains of glue, 500 grains of water. Now I've added half the water and nothing seems to happen. Stir for blinking ages and it will suddenly start clumping up. See, sort of thick paste, and then I can stick in the rest of the water and it'll end up being a creamy consistency. I don't know how well this will work, so I don't normally do a whole video with the camera in a fixed standpoint, but it'll either work or it won't. Right, so I'm applying a nice generous coating of glue. Keeping a really careful eye to make sure I've got no dry spots. And watching out for cats coming into the garage. She makes a fuss because she wants me to let her out the big front door. It's funny, you can go along applying glue over the whole lot, then you do the other face of the bamboo. Puss, behave yourself. And you come back and look at this and you find there's bits where the glue has just sort of pulled and not wetted the surface properly, and it's a fiddle, but you don't want to waste all the effort of doing a glue up only to find that you're suspicious of the glue line. And I've done it before where I've stripped off I've planed off a whole bamboo backing because there were little gaps visible that I could almost get a fingernail in, and I just didn't trust it. It didn't actually take that long, but it was a sobering experience. It just makes you realise, don't spoil the ship for a piece of tar. Take your time, do it right. If in doubt, check it again. Meow! Oh, baby cat. This cat's a bit of a attention seeker. Well, they all are, aren't they? Right, that's that done. Now for the bamboo. For any dry patches. Oh, there's one. Don't know if you can see that little patch there with no glue on. So you can see why you have to look carefully at everything. Take your time. The nice thing is, because this has got a 2-hour pot life, I don't have to rush at it like a loony. You know, I haven't got to strap it up quick before the glue starts going off. I can take my time, I can get it right. I mean, I'll probably put slightly too much glue on, but it's better to see the glue squeezing out than to be worrying that you didn't have enough. The nice thing about doing work like this is when you fuck it up, there's no one to blame but yourself. It's very character building. There we are. I've been careful to keep it round the same way as it was before. Stick that on there like that. It's quite slippery when it's all glued up, so it can be beneficial to put a bit of masking tape over it, or put some side cheeks on clamped like that to stop it moving. I'll just get a clamp on quickly in the middle just to get me started. Well, I've got a centre line marked. There, I just nip that up lightly. It's already trying to slither about. Stick a bit of masking tape down here. Might just help hold it. See, my little clamps are quite handy. They can help keep the bamboo and keep the back and belly together. In a sideways direction. But I don't have to rush because I've got 2 hours to play with. Not that it will take that long. It's trying to slither sideways there. Clamping it sideways there temporarily. I'll start getting clamps on all the way along now. I'll have more than this. This is just to get it nipped down, and I'll go back and forth tightening clamps, loosening them off. Letting it settle. Right, that's finished the glue up, and it's about time for a spot of lunch. That will stay overnight, and I can unclamp it in the morning and see what it looks like. There's a few quids worth of clamps there, but they've been accumulated over many years, and it's quite time consuming, but it's not such hard work as binding it with rubber strapping, which is rather energetic and very time consuming and messy, and can tend to put everything on a bit of a twist as well.